Camelia. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning, CJ.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to cut to the chase because I honestly have been really looking forward to this interview since we last spoke. So I had the privilege of getting to speak to you and getting to know you a bit not so long ago. And I think the first thing that I learned about you that relates to your professional background is very important to bring up because it's very much in line with the core essence of the discussion and communication toolbox, which we will be exploring today. So please correct me if I am wrong, but when you were giving me some background information about your 30-year-long career in Radio Romania, I learned that you had many hats, which include being a reporter, producer, head of marketing department. Yet the last few years, you prefer to focus more on journalism, along with the European projects. And while you were describing your career, it felt almost that you had the need to go back to your roots. That is, you started as a reporter, and you're now, after such a long time and a beautiful career, going back to focusing more on journalism. I expressed that to you and then asked, what is it that you, or rather, why is it that you feel the need to go back to your roots and go back to the basics? Could you share what you said to me at that time?
Oh, thank you, Crystal-Jade, for considering me for this interview. I appreciate this. In my case, journalism represents the basic activity of Radio Romania institution, and it is a complex job that requires communication, active listening, the ability to synthesize and correlate information. But above all, it requires understanding the power of the word delivered with appropriate emotions and empathy for the audience. This can produce profound changes of attitudes and mindsets. Returning to the basics with all the knowledge accumulated during the years gives meaning to the mission we have professionally in this case. And at the beginning of the journey, you may not understand this mission in its depth. And as such, you do not even have the confidence that you can truly be the change you want in the world, as Mahatma Gandhi said. As you accumulate information and especially experience, you realize that your two channels of communication are your roots. In fact, these roots are what motivated you to grow, and they grew stronger as you rose. I admit that here I was inspired by the research that showed that trees communicate through their roots. Yes. And the on-air and online communication channels that we at Radio Romania use the path through which we reach the soul of our listeners. So they are the ones who matter. And they feel our dedication to them. So
absolutely.
That's why.
It makes absolute sense. And I feel that you were the right person to interview. I didn't know it was going to be you. And then when we had our chat, I knew that you were the perfect person to speak to because of the gravity that you put on communication. So talking about that, the work package that Radio Romania is leading is all about communication, which makes the question, what is communication? In a previous conversation we had when talking about it, you said something so refreshingly honest. You said communication is not easy. And you even went as far as to graciously admit that even for people like you, that is journalists at Radio Romania, whose work depends much on communication, it's not easy. Could you share with our audience what it is that you said and why you believe that communication is not easy, even for you?
Yes, you're right. Communication is completely different from talking likes and dislikes. It involves the effort to get to know your audience and to put aside your ego in order to pay attention and respect to them, your audience. It requires the patient to listen carefully and not interrupt, to decipher the verbal message, but especially the non-verbal message of the one you are communicating with, not to judge the one who is talking and not to give advice if he doesn't ask for it. To know how to give feedback. Here is a complex of attitudes and behaviors that requires a lot of training. It was saying that that is paradoxical how in media institutions where communication is the basis of the job description, people can communicate wonderfully with their target audience, but they do not have good interpersonal communication. Why? Their need for affirmation and recognition attracts power relations that can lead to conflict. Communication is difficult because we don't even know ourselves, you know, not with the person in front of us. That is why we should not have expectation from others, but have moral values to refer to. It would be wonderful to be in harmony with ourselves and everything around. This will be felt in the relations with others. This is my answer for it.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. Which, you know, your answer also makes me think perhaps the original question, which was what is communication, is flawed, and gets us started on the wrong premise. Perhaps the better question is, what is effective communication? So after our previous discussion, I went and did a bit of research because I wanted to see if communication and effective communication are considered the same thing. But it turns out they're not. And if I can read something for the audience, which was what I found, and I'm quoting this directly, it said, communication and effective communication are not the same thing, although they are related concepts. Communication refers to the process of exchanging information, ideas, thoughts, and feelings between individuals or groups. It involves the transmission and reception of messages through various channels, such as spoken or written language, body language, facial expressions, gestures, and more. Effective communication, on the other hand, goes beyond merely transmitting messages. And this goes back to what you were just saying now. It focuses on the successful transfer of information or ideas in a way that is understood and interpreted as intended by the sender. Effective communication is clear, concise, and tailored to the audience's needs. It takes into account the receiver's perspective, ensures feedback is encouraged, and minimizes misunderstandings or misinterpretations. So this was the actual quotation. So having said that and having heard that, Camelia, what do you feel is the key difference between the two terms?
The key difference is effectiveness, but communication skills refer to our ability, as you already said, to receive and give information, our ability to convey messages in an organized and concise way that leaves no room for misinterpretation or misunderstanding. This is essential. And you can be very efficient by your way of communicating. Effective communication requires an understanding of the message you are communicating. Effectiveness focuses on goals. Efficiency focuses on the process that leads to a goal. Effectiveness, or I've learned in a Deutsche Welle management course that the difference between effectiveness and efficiency is the difference between doing the right thing and doing the things right. Effective communication is the ability to have a conversation with another person in a way that is engaging, focused, consistent, and offers value. Communicating effectively involves two or more people who can clearly express their intent and understand the focus of purpose of the conversation, while also allowing each person to get their point across. Effective communication is important for people to communicate with others while expressing their needs and understanding the task of duties given to them. And it's very important in our project. The word effective in the dictionary has the meaning of true, concrete, real. Let's try to be like this, and we will have an effective communication full of efficiency. This is what I think.
Mm-hmm. There's a part in this quote, I think it was the part where it said it's tailored to the audience's needs, and it takes into account the receiver's perspective, which takes me back to something that you said, that it also involves feelings, perhaps even reading the room and being empathetic, perhaps would be the word. Like if and I think that's something you had mentioned in our previous conversation, that empathy is key, caring about the audience, and that's, I think that's also what you said in the previous conversation, that a good journalist job is to actually care.
To care, yes, to care about your audience, your interlocutor, your...
Yes, exactly. So perhaps one of the real life scenarios or settings where the difference between communication and effective communication can be seen is in the classroom. A while back, while we were still in the design phase of the work package, Radio Romania gave the rest of the partners an assignment where we would have to, through informal interviews and participant observation, try to answer the question that you gave us, which was, which are the most common problems and issues in communication between teachers and students? Could you share with the audience what it is that you found when you received all the information?
Yes, I have some notice here, because the work paper were quite with a lot of information, but in principle, the communication problems reported by almost all partners are about the same, even if they were formulated or argued differently. And because we are dialogue partners, I would start from your material. In short, you mentioned communication problems from the teacher's perspective and from students' perspective. Okay. The communication problems from the teacher's perspective are lack of attention, disruptive behavior, disregard for rules, lack of interest and participation, insubordination. And from the student's perspective, the communication problems are inconsistency, stereotyping, bias, belittling, insensitivity, shouting, lack of attention, lack of accountability, lack of representation, disregarding cultural and individual difference, and perhaps the most important, ignoring students' voice. And you, Crystal-Jade, emphasize that in your paperwork in big art letters, because that's something we have to keep in mind. This is why we must focus on effective communication, which must be understood as teamwork in which the objectives are communicated with the rules agreed by both parties, with the distribution of roles within the team, the observer, the mediator, the presenter, for example. Even these roles are only motivational in the communication process. They can even contribute subliminally to the improvement of the teaching process. And if, let's say, everything is chaos, the students don't care what you said or what you want, then maybe it is important to put aside the goals and the actual communication, stop and give them time as they want to be heard. Approach them, make them feel you understand them, gain their trust, and then go to work together as team partners, to feel that they are listened to, heard and understood. This is very important. Also, colleagues from Belgium pointed out some important aspects regarding communication in an online and or blended learning environment, which we must take into account in this project centered on hybrid education. Among these problems, I would mention aspects refers to lack of nonverbal communication. In an online classroom environment, teachers and students often miss the nonverbal communication that is so important in the physical classroom environment, such as facial expression, voice tone, or body language. Lack of direct interaction. Some students may feel that there is lack of direct interaction with the teachers, making it difficult to ask questions or make comments. A lack of social interaction. Some pupils may feel that there is a lack of social interaction with other pupils, which can make them feel lonely or isolated. Colleagues from Poland draw attention to those problems related to students who present certain spatial education needs, and those who are gifted, both groups are considered to pose problems that are not properly catered for in Polish schools. Usually teachers do not know to handle situations in which additional questions resulting from either boredom or lack of understanding are frequently asked by students. Unfortunately, teachers prefer the passive reception of knowledge from students rather than challenges and unforeseen situations. So these are the main problems, and these are aspects where we have to work more on.
That these assignments that were given were from different local contexts. So these were from different countries. And it's quite interesting that you said that, of course, even though we had our individual take on it, the core message was the same, which is fascinating, which probably means, again, it's taking us back to, we need to go back to our roots. We need to go back to the basics of communication, which I hope that we will manage to do with this project. So just to get back to our work packages and the continuation of the work of what you've seen this, you've received this information, and then you had to go and to design the work packages given that information. So having the privilege to have a peek behind the scenes, I think the term, or rather the approach that your team chose to favor when designing the work package, is that of effective communication. My question is, would you say that that is a fair assessment? And if so, how did that approach guide your decisions in creating the structure and the components of the discussion and communication toolbox? If you could take us through your design thinking process, that would be great.
Yeah, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, blended learning came into the spotlight, and we realized that also digitalization has advanced teachers and communicators have been caught off guard. Blended learning was a concept, a good way to learn, but it never had to go mainstream. The pandemic, however, changed all that. What we, Radio Romania, proposed is based both on the experience of the project manager, who is basically a teacher, Costin, and on that of the team members who have the radio communication exercise very similar to what we want to implement in the project. Think about the similarities between our work and our relationship with listeners based on a specific communication, which nowadays involves webcams, social media, specific application, etc. And the communication of teachers with their students in the online environment. In both cases, you will find effective communication skills adapted to the remote communication channels, which, however, must be approached as a fairly close one. At radio, it is a maximum of 1 meter, the distance between the transmitter's mouth and the microphone, plus the distance between the receiver's ear and the speaker. That is why communication approaches a friendly, natural one, with technical means that and application that can accommodate the participation of a variable audience. So
yeah, that answers the question.
yes.
Shall we get a little bit more practical in regards to what you just said now, but also the work package itself? My understanding is that there are 3 main components to the work package. So could you take us through them and share some information on each of these components, and specifically share with our audience what they can expect to find, and perhaps most importantly, how they can benefit from each of these components?
This is a big part.
It is a big part.
in our interview. I will try to synthesize. The main role that Radio Romania has in this project is to create a guide that will contain specification on adapting communication for the online environment, skills and behavior for this communication to be efficient and effective. Course planning models, tools for discussions, the development of digital skills that can complement the impact of online communication, and last but not least, aspects related to body, heart, and mind in online session to prevent fatigue that leads to decreased attention, demotivation, and even abandon of the blended learning process. In short, the structure of this guide includes 3 chapters. The first chapter refers to the dynamics of online learning, to highlight the advantages of using this medium, especially since the technological evolution and development of artificial intelligence is astonishing. So it is good to prepare and face the changes imposed by the inevitable progress in this field as well. In the second chapter, methodology and the use of online tools that, as I said, come in the efficiency of communication, we aim to promote the professionalism of teachers and those skills considered the most important in the mixed learning process that we identify at the beginning in the process of research that was the basis of this project. There were skills which were indicated by the participants in this research as very important. We looked at those with the mean score above 4.5. Thus, we identified 10 skills, which will be the basis of our project's framework of skills that are at stake of not being properly developed in the classroom. Compassion, this word is a keyword also in this interview, was on the first place. Democratic participation, we also discussed a little few minutes ago about to hear the audience voice and to have a democratic participation working team. Respect for the environment, communication skills, self-discipline, ability to learn independently, flexibility and adaptability, ability to think independently, resourcefulness, appreciation of a healthy lifestyle. The 10 skills, each presented in a template, a communication toolbox, were to common contribution of all partners, 5 of them being produced by Radio Romania and the other 5 by the other partners in this project. Radio Romania also produced 3 podcasts with the following issues: the importance of communication skills in blended learning, blended learning communication, location and work-life practice, challenges that those involved in the blended learning process may have, and the designing and integrating digital resources into learning activities. And we have reached chapter 3, online fatigue and prevention strategies, design starting from the idea that the online learning environment involves risk that we must anticipate and prevent. We refer here to a certain time of physical and mental fatigue for which we propose prevention models and exercise, such as the body, heart, and mind model in online session. Mind mapping as online tool for active participating engagement. Exercise and practices to support online and offline learning, brain exercises and physical exercises. And I think that these are in few words. Yes.
And obviously for our participants, we will have time to go into these in depth. But yeah, this episode today is just an introduction, just so that they can have an idea of roughly what to expect. But we definitely will take the time to analyze it a little bit more. Speaking of which, I'd like to just take just a moment to talk about the component with the template. So like the other work packages, so the online tools and the game-based learning tools, there is a template whose goal for this work package, is through effective communication between teachers and students to facilitate the development of the chosen skill. So out of the 10 skills that we've been talking about, there's a specific template, like you said, for each of these. So I want to ask you a question in this. Why was it necessary to create a template where each of these skills has its own template?
As I said a little before, the project started from a research, a questionnaire applied to a group of several hundred teachers from the partner countries. This made it necessary to create this working tool, the template, in the sense that the initial questionnaire helped us to better understand the needs of teachers, communicators, trainers, and as such to pay more attention to those skills in the development of which the support is the most necessary. The template is a useful and easy tool, like instructions for a training that pays off. It is like a synthesis of what we want to communicate and complements the guide with action directions, practical tips, work schemes, warnings and questions to be used to work on each of the 10 transversal skills considered very important for the implementation of the project. I would like to emphasize the idea that working in the international team of this project with people from different educational and social context contributes to the creation of a coherent and useful material for the end users. That's why was this
absolutely
tool very important.
But also because in the if we go back to for our audience who has been watching from the beginning, if we go back to the second episode, which was with the team that was responsible for the original research that you also referred to, what we saw is that there was a huge discrepancy between what the teachers were saying, these are the most important skills, and the ones that they actually practiced in the classroom itself. So what we understood is that they do consider these skills important, but for some reason there is a gap and there's a bit of difficulty actually implementing them in a way that they can help the students develop these specific skills in an effective manner that is going to help them in their life. So these templates are there to help the teachers with ideas on how to develop the specific skill based on the theme, of course. Communication questions, there are questions to help aid the conversation, not to lead the conversation, but to aid the conversation, of course, so that we can hear the student's voice on that specific skill. So this is a very important template, which is why it has its own work package as well. All right. I have to ask you something that you mentioned earlier. You mentioned AI, and AI is the elephant in many rooms, including classrooms. AI being, of course, artificial intelligence, and it has a lot of complications, or it could have even more complications in many matters. But I would like to focus on AI's implications on communication. In what ways do you think AI could impact communication as a whole?
We must not be afraid to integrate AI, artificial intelligence, but we must work on the ability to convey emotions and experiences as humanly as possible. This human emotional intelligence will not be able to be replaced by AI. And if AI will become a working partner for teachers, I believe that the impact in the educational process will be a positive one. It will be a challenge for those who will understand to work with themselves to develop the emotional intelligence so necessary for soul-to-soul communication. AI needs us to provide it with information, theory, case studies, and directions for action with clear requirements. If we don't know what to ask for, what we want to get, where we want to go with an educational process, for example, then yes, AI will be a problem and give us headaches or put our jobs at risk. But this is also a challenge for human intelligence. If the classical teacher knows how to make friends with a digital teacher, then they will be an unbeatable team. Mm-hmm. So this is my opinion.
Absolutely. Speaking of the human teacher, I don't think, so first of all, for those who don't know, I absolutely love blended learning, but high quality blended learning. But the connection between that and what you're saying now, AI in the classroom, is that the point of blended learning is to give the teacher more quality time with the students. And I think it's what you said. If we focus on the human intelligence, so basically if AI, just like before, during the Industrial Revolution era, when, factory workers were working in a line, and then, things changed and some things became automated, perhaps if we come in with the perspective of seeing how can AI, or how can just digital transformation in general also help us have more quality time with our students. Maybe that's something to really focus on, because the human teacher will never truly be replaced, nor should it, because of those emotions. The machines will never have emotion. But if the teacher actually has more time, how many times do teachers in a classroom, including myself, say, there's not enough time for this, there's not enough time for that, there's not enough time to actually enjoy learning? So if we use AI in education, not to say that AI cannot bring challenges that might bring drawbacks, so we do have to be careful for that, but it's not all bad, and not technology in general, just like technology is not bad also. So I completely agree with you. And I think what you said now on the need to work on developing human intelligence basically is another argument towards the importance of the mission of this project, which is to facilitate the effective development of these life skills, these transversal skills. So, having said that, how does the concept of responsibility as well as autonomy, which I've seen in your guides for your toolbox, how do they play a role in the development of transversal skills and in human intelligence?
Being responsible, means caring about others. To understand that you are part of a construction that depends on your worth and stability. Autonomy means taking responsibility for who you are and the decision you make, aware of how it may impact others. We must remember that we have the solution to our own challenges. We don't have to wait for others to give them to us. In the context of this project, our contribution is to provide the participants with a baseline, a starting point to stimulate their imagination for the form of blended learning. Perhaps the most important thing is to understand that this project does not end at a specific moment. It is a process that constantly evolves, update for an even better version of ourselves. If we take one of the role of gatekeepers, that we must be present to provide guidance to those who use the tools we propose. And do you remember the most important skills in our research? The number one was
compassion.
Compassion. And if we have compassion for the problems that the teachers, the trainers will have in this process, it won't be a easy one. We have to understand this. So if we have compassion for what will happen, I think, and they will understand that maybe it's most important not to go and to train, but it's important to make people feel that they are there in the classroom, the pupils, they are in the classroom for them, for the students. Maybe it is more important to ask them, hey, did you forget your smile? Let's try to learn how to smile, to hear the smile in the words, in the process of education, to feel the happy. Because, you know, people don't learn how to be happy and to be educated in a way that relaxes them. So that's why I underline the fact that artificial intelligence will help us with those tools, with the information, with instruments, and we learn to transmit empathy, compassion, and these kind of things that students ask for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, there's two things that you mentioned now that I think are very important. So one, you mentioned the word baseline. So what we're giving is the baseline. And the other one, you, among other things, mentioned the importance of having fun, being happy within the learning process. So on the baseline concept and connecting that to autonomy and responsibility. So yes, what we are trying to give to educators is a baseline, meaning this is not your Bible. This is what you should take, look at it, look at how it can help you, but then think, how can this help me within my context? How can I change it in such a way where through the minds of compassion, how can this actually help my students? How can I change it in such a way? And if you do have questions on the issue of autonomy and on responsibility, you need to also come to us. So if you want something more, reach out. I remember one of the best things that one of my professors told me at university is go knock on doors. If you want to learn something more, go knock on the door. If you don't ask, you won't receive. And it's true, actually. I have never had anyone turn down, the question of, could you please tell me more about this? So please do ask. So participants out there listening to this, please do reach out. If you need more help, if you need us to make it more concrete to you, please ask. It's a common responsibility. We have the responsibility to do our research and give you the best that we can. But you also have the responsibility to, if you want something more specific, just ask. We're here to help each other, and we're also here to learn from you. And then
yes, not only to ask, but to share feedback, because we also learn from them.
Absolutely.
From their experience in the classroom, in online, and yes.
Yeah, these are not these again have been created by human beings based on the input that we've gathered from our fellow teachers, of course, but it's not perfect because also, in any situation it's different. So you do have to change it, and we have different backgrounds, different experiences, and actually the most important input that probably will be produced out of this is teachers sharing with teachers what they know and them exchanging ideas. So we're just here to provide the platform and be a medium and try to streamline a few things and
be a small part of their team.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Be a small part of your team. It's actually our privilege to be in this process, to connect with you and not the other way around.
Yes.
Just to make that clear, if there was any miscommunication. And then the other thing is, yes, just focus on, I think, when you speak to students rather, because this also came out through the assignment that you gave us, is they find school stressful, boring, those things. Yes. And isn't that a shame? Shouldn't it be a happy place? Shouldn't it be a place that we just love to learn? But not just the students, us as well. We're also tired. So yes, if transformation from digital technology can help, so we can have more time to be happy and associate learning with happiness, that is really the goal. Yes. So we have more or less reached the conclusion of this interview, and I hope we have more time to chat very near in the future. But before we say goodbye, is there a message you would like to pass on to our participants? And it could be a personal one, or it could be one that's inspired by the perspective of your work package.
Yes, let me think. We must be aware of the role we play, that the contribution to quality education is that to rising generations can build a better future for themselves. And remember that the effective communication is a two-way street, and we want those who trust this project to be a support point in their work, to interact with us, asking for feedback, promoting and sharing ideas, as you said, emotions or failures from which they have learned a lot. We will be on the communication platforms dedicated to this project, waiting for these interactions from which we'll learn together. And I would like to conclude by expressing my gratitude to all those who give us meaning and emphasize that each of us has the inner resources necessary to contribute to great works. We just have to be aware of it. Thank you very much, Crystal-Jade.
Absolutely. And just to close this section off, I'd like to share something that through what you've been saying about communication, it also reminded me, not communication, but compassion. Communication and compassion together reminded me of something that a very important mentor of mine has said. Her name is Kim Bearden, and she said, it isn't as much about the words you say as it is about the sincerity with which you say them, which is why a lot of the times, someone might be saying the right words, but our energy or whatever feels that it's not sincere. So you can feel that, and of course your actions are affected by that. So yes, if we come from a place of compassion, if we lead with love, the correct communication, the effective communication will come across, and hopefully we can create that better place that you were referring to and be a part of the solution. Yeah,
you're right.
Thank you so much for this interview, and thank you to our participants for watching.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day, everyone. you.